Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to talk or go over the proposed budget, and then I will move into just discussing a little bit about some painting work that we need to do here at the church. So for those of you who memorized the challenge budget, you know there are a few changes.
Not to take it.
For those that didn't, I'll go over what has changed. And that's primarily in the area of some increases in expenditures. Line 214, which would be Francois' salary, we added, I had missed his 3% COLA. All the employees were given a 3% COLA. Line 217, payroll taxes, in order to compensate for the increase in salaries, we had to add something to that. So that increased by $247. Believe it or not, workers' compensation insurance decreased by $21. I had missed the copier lease, thanks to Steve. He caught that. That is $1428 that had to be added to the budget. And finally, building and liability insurance increased $566. So as you can see, we have a balanced budget that includes using money from the surplus from 2024. We are not using any endowment fund money to balance the budget. The surplus, we had very generous giving in 2024. I think almost all the pledge giving was fulfilled. And then with Pastor Libby departing, we had some money that was left from her compensation. Are there any questions about the budget that I can answer? Okay.
So that will be one item that we'll vote on officially next week, right, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah.
Those of you that may have looked around the church noticed that we do need some painting done in the exterior. If you look just at the windows here in the sanctuary, the paint is cracking and beginning to peel off. But we have a significant amount of painting that needs done on the exterior, especially the sanctuary and parts of Hafer Hall. So we have two estimates. Actually, one estimate for doing all the work. That's from two dudes. That comes to just a little bit under $40,000. That would include doing the steeple. Fortunately, we have people that will do that kind of work, because you're not going to catch me going up even a bucket. We have one other estimate from a company that specializes in doing that type of work, steeple work, for that painting, just that, and that is about almost $3,000 less than what you had proposed. And a lot of that factors into the cost of the lift unit, which one they're using, when it's available, and so forth. So we also asked them to consider giving us an estimate on doing all the work, the painting work. That's not something they normally do, but I believe they have agreed to do that. We just haven't gotten that yet. But next week, what we would ask you to approve is spending up to $40,000 to do all of this work that needs to be done. And some of it, as I said, it is pressing. If we don't do it, then we're going to be spending more to replace sashes and window frames and so forth. So, any questions in that regard? Yes.
Does that come out of the endowment?
At this point, we have money from the Gilbert bequest, and we do have endowment money that would not come from the fund itself. It's already sitting in the savings account. We should have just gotten the last quarterly disbursement. I didn't look at the account, but that should have come in sometime this week. And hopefully we will not have to take any more money out next year. It's not something I would want to do now. With the way the markets have been reacting to January, it's good to leave as much there as we can. Any other questions?
Good. Thank you. I'm going to kind of move a little bit. So I'm going to talk about the Friends School, and then I'm going to talk about the decision for us as to the future of the church. And so I'll ask you to just keep your questions for both of those till after I'm done here. But let me begin with the Friends School request to use a significant part of our building for their academic years starting in September. A little bit of history. When they did approach the church, one of the first concerns we did was to ask the preschool, are you continuing beyond this year? Because that was our first priority. And the preschool staff, there's 4 of them now, about 20 kids, said, no, this has got to be our last year. The Friends School has potentially an idea to have a preschool group, but they don't at this point. But that allowed us then to seriously consider talking with the Friends School, because we would have the space, the Hafer Hall space. So in the last few months, everybody from the Friends School has been over to check the space that they would be using. And the proposed space at this point, and this would not be shared space, and that's a big difference, because shared space is like if they need to use the chapel for a meeting. As long as they put it back the way they got it, we're not assessing that as rental space. But the non-shared space is everything except the church office, upstairs and downstairs. And the teachers were ecstatic. They have about 30 students now, and they hope to double that within the next few years. They have budgets prepared and all that. So what space would be shared? Really, the only 2 spaces probably would be the chapel. Like I said, if they have a weekly gathering, for the kids. Quakers, as you know, do a lot in silence, so they don't have a lot of teaching kind of stuff, and they have kids from all faiths that are attending now. So it's not really, it's not an indoctrination program here, okay, that they're offering. They're offering just an alternative for some kids that have had a hard time in public schools. We raised the question when they first came. We got a lot of teachers here. We've got a lot of teachers that are concerned about public education. We're not really interested in a lot of competition between public schools and these private ventures. And the answer was, we got a lot of teachers at the meeting house too. It's our concern as well. These are really kids, and it only goes through the 8th grade. These are kids that really have fallen through the slats in some regards and need some special attention. They have 30 kids now enrolled. 70% of them are on some kind of help for their tuition, because tuition ain't cheap. Well, it's not cheap for daycare anywhere. But income for the church. We met in the last of December. The building use committee hashed out a potential formula for what we would charge for the space that we have. And we came up with $2,500 a month. And I sent that over to the director of the preschool. I did not hear a scream back. In fact, an email said, we received your email and we're very interested, excited about the possibility. Might they dicker a little bit with us? Yeah, maybe they will, I don't know. But that's not a firm figure now. But I don't think I can't see it going much lower than that. That would be $30,000 a year for income for the church doing that. And that's not a very unreasonable rate for nonprofits renting somewhere. So that's where that is. We would make room for the transition after the preschool here is done. So over the summer, June, and then over the summer, a lot of stuff. We got a lot of stuff to kind of be removed. And some of it might stay, but all those classes now got preschool stuff in them. Could we end up, if we start having the Sunday school again, you know, it would be likely that we might meet somewhere else beside those spaces. But they're used to shared space, especially every space that they have now at the meeting house is shared space. One of the things that we said, because we checked with Dawn on this, and I said, Dawn, you know, it's going to mean more hours for you. And she said, I don't want to work full time. So we have also said to the Friends School, you would provide custodial work for your part of the building that you're occupying throughout the year. That's your responsibility. And so they know that that's an expectation we have. So that's kind of where we are. They're hoping to have a decision from us by March so they can start publicizing with their recruitments for new students where they'll be having. So that's that. The second thing I wanted to just go over with you is the decision to proceed with the strategic plan, which means proceed with ending or bringing to fruition the visioning process. We're in the process of that, okay? And as I said before, I said last week in the sermon, that meeting in November was very important because it gave us a sense of what's important to us. It gave us a sense of what our why was, which really is something we needed to do, whether or not we continue to say 3 to 5 years, let's try to give it a shot, or if we said, you know, we need to start a path to closure. You know, we needed to know our why for either of those decisions. But having said that, I presented to you the nurse log image early on in October. And I got to say, now, this is not particularly a new idea in the world. You know, a lot of people use nurse log illustrations and examples and lots of different things. But it seems to make sense to me to apply it to what's happening to churches like ours, okay, that once were pretty strong and are now in a different time of their life. And the time of their life that I see as a metaphor is the tree in the forest that's fallen. It is not done giving life. It is not done for decades. It will continue to nurture life, plants, animals, you know, you name it. And it's, I don't even call it a decay process. A new church can sprout out of that. Sometimes you've got nurse logs that actually are having having trees growing right out of them. But having said that, I think a motto, and I just came up with this week. So this is the first to hear this. It'll blow your socks away. I'm not holding my breath. Anyhow, but I think churches like ours at this point are at a juncture. We can either try or die. And what does that mean? It means we'll try anything. We don't want to die. You know, we'll just try anything. Any idea that somebody has, we'll try it. Or the nurse log that says we're going to give to live. Can I hear a ooh? Probably the only time I'll get an ooh on that one. But anyway, I think give to live is really an apt metaphor, or not metaphor, but motto for our nurse log. Anyhow, so the history. You know the history. We began talk about merger last year, and some of us thought, especially if it was with Salem, and Salem said, we aren't leaving our building, then it was like, well, that means we would have to leave our building. And while that's not an impossibility, we weren't ready for something like that. We hadn't talked about it. We didn't know what the legacy of the building would be. So we stepped back a little bit. And then when Libby resigned, which was a surprise, I think, to a lot of us, but I went to the conference staff and I said, this is probably a little unusual, but I would love to be the interim at Hamilton Park Church if you give me the okay. And believe me, they know and I know how hard it is to get interims, especially somebody that has to work through a lot of different decisions that a church is making. So they said, go, yeah, fine, you have our blessing. So I'm here officially as an interim. And what an interim usually does is works with a church to get ready to call a new pastor, okay? So to deal with a strategic plan, for 3 to 5 years means forming what you need to do for a church profile and then to go searching for pastoral leadership. New kind of leadership for us, because you're not going to be able to support, as is so many other churches, a full-time pastor. But there's a lot of other options in terms of sharing a pastor and the like. So, if we go with a strategic plan, Jill's ready. She's, has said she'll come probably by Zoom to meet with a smaller group of, you don't have to have 37 people developing the strategic plan, but as many as want to, we can work on a strategic plan with her, Zoom likely, and create some goals. Those goals would be very significant for a church profile, because that's what you're saying we want to do for the next 3 to 5 years. Okay, so the challenge is going to be, if we do this route, the challenge will be to find pastoral leadership. And that's going to require really not waiting. I can tell you the churches in the Lancaster Association that have been waiting for profiles. Guess what? They haven't had profiles in months come to them. So we're likely going to have to go searching, contacting people, saying, would you be willing to share, would you want to function with 2 churches instead of 1? And that's a conversation we can have with some pastors, I think. But that's down the road. Okay, that's mid-year this year, after a church profile has been completed. Now let me briefly describe what might be a legacy path. Just to say, to close. Okay, you cannot close a church easily. Okay, you can close it, but it usually takes a year or 2 to actually do the business that's required. I know this because I've been part of a Zoom meeting with pastors across the country, about 8 or 10 usually in any one meeting, with one of the colleagues of Jill White, who is in charge of working with churches that are closing, with the church board for whatever fund loan, the group that Jill's with, and there's legal stuff that you have to do to close, and what you have to take care of your members. You have to figure out a way. I mean, we have like 10 shut-ins right now, and the question is, what do you do? What do you say? Well, we're closing. No. What's it mean for them? You have to make arrangements for a lot of different things where people will be shepherded, whether there's a new church that would take on some of the shut-ins and stuff like that. So the closure kind of route is an option, but it takes time as well. And it usually takes somebody that's done it before. I've never done it before, and I think I'd be a little too sad to want to do it here. But anyhow, but that would be an option at some point. Those are the issues that we'll be voting on next week. So the 2 items that I would suggest that you want to talk about, any questions, would be the Friends School or this moving on with the strategic plan. I don't think we ought to vote, it's either or for closing or the 3 to 5 year plan. I think if we have enough people that would be committed to sticking and doing what we want to try to do in 3 to 5 years, that that's a positive action. The default would be if everybody says, I'm too tired to do anything. And you know what? I just heard of a church in Lebanon. I've served so much in the Lebanon Association, and I'm watching them drop like flies, the churches there. But there's one that and I'm not going to say which one it is, but this was some very active people with the conference were members and whatnot, and they're just tired. They're just tired. And there's only like a handful of people that are there, and there's a church that wants to take them over. This is what's interesting. There's a church that wants to take them over that is absolutely way off the board. I don't know whether you would call it a Christian nationalism church or not. They're just not anywhere near the witness that the United Church of Christ has been, or even a somewhat moderate denomination has been. They have, they're wackadoodle, but they're wanting to take over the building. They're wanting the building to be given to them. And these people, some of the people that are there in the leadership now, are just so tired and they're wanting to go along with it. Carrie Call was there trying to moderate the whole thing, and it's a mess. So that's what I'm saying. Closing churches is challenging. This is an amazing time for churches to transform into a new reality. And I think that's the challenge for churches like ours to say, can we be church in a different way? Not a totally different way, but in a way that sustains us. With the building uses we're talking about, that's like probably 10 new members or more in terms of income. Now, that only happens adjusting the budget once, but, not going to have any trouble paying a part-time person in the future if you share resources with other churches. All right, I'll shut up. Questions? Oh, we can answer all the questions. Yeah.
My first question has to do with the sharing of the building. You said it would not be shared space. So it's this, we would have the sanctuary and the fellowship hall underneath. So for instance, if we wanted to start a godly play, Sunday school, that could be done downstairs.
Could be, yeah.
That we wouldn't have to share that space.
We wouldn't have to share that space.
But we still have non-sanctuary meeting space for our use.
Yes, absolutely. And it's divided down. You can divide stuff. I was at a scout meeting. This just blows my way. It's getting cookie time now. We have a scout troop meeting here. Where's Florida? And there had to have been 70 kids and their parents downstairs on Friday night, learning how to, sell their cookies and what to say, the scripts and everything. There's a ton of families around here, and they're using that space, and that's, I didn't mention that. They're not paying anything for it, but that's an example of the church giving to the community for sure.
And the second question has to do with new pastoral leadership, and might we hire new leadership with the goal of closing the church in 3 years? Are there church closers out there?
Good question. There are, Cindy Garris is the only one that I know that closed a church in Penn Central Conference. Now, she's at Colonial Park. Many of you women's retreats know Cindy. So I don't know of a lot of pastors that have been in that situation. There is guidance at the national level, at least at this board, the church building alone. There is, how many of you get the Still Speaking daily devotion, UCC, Still Speak? And Carol, don't you get the? Oh, okay. One of the writers for that is for the Massachusetts and Connecticut new conference. There is skilled in closings. He consults for that, though he doesn't go into the church necessarily. Yeah, I would think it would be harder to find somebody that had that skill set, because it's almost just like saying an interim that would close the church is what it would be. Their longevity, they'd have to find another church. Maybe it would be a good gig for somebody to do, to go from place to place. But that's an interesting option, and, to see. But, one of the questions about the strategic plan is really, can we sustain the level of the church that we are now? Because we really can't get much smaller than this without being, without it really becoming overwhelming for a few people. It's been pretty hard for some of the leadership, for some of your leaders. There's a lot more people stepping up, and that's good. We need people to step up and just do little things to make a difference. No? Okay. Any other question about that? Yes.
Okay, 2 questions. Number 1, what happens if we have oil service in here, but the school going on over there?
What happens if we have?
Have a memorial service in here. There's a school going on over there.
If you have a memorial service here while the school is in session.
Okay. Good point. Yeah, if we have a big service here, which sometimes happens, then parking is going to be the biggest thing. We've never had trouble with it when even when we had a more robust preschool with 70 or 80 kids here. We never had that trouble. You let the funeral directors hassle with the parking outside. But parking is a concern, and for sure. And so that's why we've got to make sure that the back lot is available for teachers and stuff like that. And because they'll be dropping off kids, during the week for sure. So it may be we'll have to plan funerals around times when, at least when parents are not going to be dropping off kids. Which is usually early and then late in the day picking them up. Any other?
And second question.
Yeah.
So how did our access to the building get affected by having the school here?
How can you what?
Our access to the building. So like if I want to come to the building when...
Security issues are going to be the same for the school as they are for the preschool. They need to be locked up and so that space is secure always because that's been secure for the preschool, right? So yeah, so that would be they would have the same secure issues. Yeah, good questions. Anybody else? Yes.
Based on the meeting we had in November, it seems like we're still interested in being a mission church in whatever capacity we can manage. So that I think it would be good to keep that in mind and to look forward to possibly another 3 to 5 years.
And that's, it dawned on me last week, I think when I was preaching, and I mentioned it in the sermon, sometimes I get inspirations while I'm preaching. No, not inspirations, but when I looked out, I really did look at the church directory. I'm finding stuff that I didn't know existed here that I'm so happy to find. Old records, Morgan's bulletins from the first day of his worship here, upstairs. They haven't been thrown out. But I found all the church directories, so it was a walk down memory lane looking at the first directory when I was here. And I'm thinking, it's a different congregation. So, if for those of us that are saying, we might not be here in 5 to 10 or 15 years. I probably might, it's like, no, but somebody else might be. And that's the question, is whether or not somebody else will be here. And you don't have to have a gazillion people joining, but you have to have some people. And so we need to be, and this church is a friendly church. It's always, I don't know if it's always been, at least Al Bartholomew didn't think so before I came. That story, some of you old timers. But it's been a friendly church. And anybody that shows up is likely to maybe come back, to see the quality of the people here. So I don't think it's impossible, and especially with a lot of vitality in the church, all those kids downstairs. And I'm thinking, we don't want all your kids, but gee, maybe 1 or 2 families at some point might say, hey, it's nice that you're doing this, and wonder what it's like to worship here. I don't know. But we have to consider that there would be people that would still be interested in being part of our fellowship. And that we only can see that as it works itself out. I think having and this is something that some of us, Mel and Mike and I and Carol didn't know about it, so she wasn't able to be at the front end of the meeting, but we met with the township supervisor, the manager, and we said, you want to buy the church? And he said, no, we're not being able to do that. But the township manager said, basically, we really would hate to see this property not be a church. And so basically he said to us, whatever you do that serves the community, and that to me means groups that are in the church serving the community, we'll try to be as supportive as we can. And so, township issues, any ordinances that have to be waived or whatever you do, variances, I guess they call them right now. And that's called a halo effect. And there is a halo effect in any church that's in any neighborhood. Even if people aren't there, they know that there's stuff going on there. They're glad to have that stuff going on, and that makes a difference. It makes a difference between people checking it out if they move into the neighborhood. We're not going to have the Jews checking us out. There's a lot of Jewish families moving in the neighborhood, the ones that have to walk to the synagogue. They're not going to be checking us out. But, anybody else that's moving into the neighborhood and looking for a church might check us out. We have a couple of those situations right now where people, and the box, there's people that can be joining the church. It's just not going to be hundreds, even probably dozens. We don't need dozens, but I shouldn't be selling an option. Anything else? Any other questions? It's great. I'm thankful for consistory saying we really ought to roll this out slowly so people don't feel like they come to the annual meeting and it's like, whoa, you're going to take 2 hours here to get through this business. If you have questions, if you have questions of us or any of the leaders, just email us or talk to us. But there's Flora.
I've been struggling a lot with this. I don't know if I could talk about it. I'm concerned that we don't have the people power to go forth with long-range planning, picking a new minister. And maybe it's just because I'm feeling old and tired. and I see other people who have been here forever. I would love this to say yes to 3 to 5 years, but I'm just not sure that that's the right decision. I see this church continuing to affect this community in whatever way we can make that happen. I'm not sure as I look around, look how small we are. How much energy do we have? Who's going to step up and be on the consistory and the long-range planning committee and so forth? So I'm really struggling with that a lot. And I'm thinking back, I would like to know how other people are feeling, because I'm not hearing anybody share this. And I don't know how this vote is going to go, and I don't want to be shocked like we were whenever that other vote was, because people didn't speak up. So that's my concern.
So let me share one thing, Flora, about being a smaller membership church. We are a smaller membership church, and it's a new experience for Hamilton Park. It is not a new experience for a lot of congregations. I served a smaller membership church when I first began ministry, and we never had more than 50 people. Would have been a huge turnout. Guess what? For pastoral leadership in a smaller membership church, to stay fully busy, you have to do stuff outside of the church. There's not a lot of demands on the members to do stuff. Now, there are demands, there's no question about that, but they usually are not demands that exceed what I would call the gift mix of the congregation. As much as I love the fact that we've been 20 years or more going on work camps, we're not there anymore. We're not going to go on work camps anymore. But that doesn't mean that we don't still have a ministry of some sort. And so there's things that we're not going to be able to do. But there's probably some things that, and that meeting in November outlined a few things, especially when we put the high priorities. What that was trying to help us begin to do was narrow things down. Not necessarily to what are the essentials of a small church, but what we need, what we want to see, what we feel like we do have energy to do. Like, for example, the community meal. I think the community meal has always been well supported, and that's something that we seem to want to do, and we still can. Maybe it comes to a point where we can't, but right now we still can do that kind of stuff. So really moving forward, and even especially with pastoral leadership, I try to talk pastors into taking on another church. Okay? I have. I could point to people, especially in the Lebanon Association, who I've said, you know, you're doing all right here. Your church is doing all right here. This little church over here, though, needs pastoral leadership. And if you became the pastor of both churches, and guess what? You would have a larger influence. You know, you'd have your 50 people that are worshiping with you on one side, and then you'd have 20 or 30 more here. Same sermon. You don't have to write a different sermon. You're going to be visiting people in the same hospital. So, in other words, taking on another church is not, and here's the big thing, a lot of pastors are not getting what is a fair compensation for their work. There's a lot of churches like ours that think, because they've always had a full-time minister, that the person that they hired, oh, we couldn't afford insurance, but the guy's wife or husband has insurance to cover him. Yeah, oh, okay, that works for that person. He can afford contributions to the pension, but the person's willing to come because they need a job. No, but when you share resources, you get leaders who need fair compensation, that need benefits that my generation certainly has had, and you don't have to pay them all yourself as a congregation. We're talking about right now, and this is, you know, don't quote me on this, but when the last time I brokered this with a church, it was like we were looking between $100,000 and $110,000 for the pastor's package. Each church gave 50% of that, and that pastor is now in full-time ministry and loving it. Doesn't have to work as a security officer in the hospital. It's like, which, by the way, he was considered a chaplain because everybody knew he was ordained, and so he was there all night. But they called on him when they needed a pastor. So just the whole mindset of pastors at this point. There's a lot of pastors that need to be challenged to take on another church, especially if they don't have to drive 100 miles to get to it on a Sunday morning. Yeah. So I think there's options. And Flora, I think this legacy idea that I had, the only reason I would try to say, let's try to do this, is because there's a group that's already done it and seem to have, I mean, you've met regularly for Bible study, and that's been an important group. And I think that can be an important group. This is slightly changing, the focus of it, but still will be Bible study and faith development, looking at faith issues. But it's something that people seem to, I hope they seem to want, So if there's something that people want, I mean, look, you're walking on Mondays, and that's there's not very many groups that are walking on Monday. Then there's some of those people that are going to Starbucks on Thursday. You got to hear that story, but that's 5 women, right, at Starbucks. And somebody came up to him and said, I've been listening to what you've been talking about, ladies. Anyhow, this guy was trying to hit up on one of them. I don't know. He wasn't, he was too young. But he actually went to school with Annette's son. So there was that kind of conversation. But, who knows? But, the walking together. Romeo, we have several people that are no longer members of the church, or coming to church, that are part of Romeo. So, some of these programs are just things that we want. And, you will have energy for the things that you want. Can you get away with other stuff? Financially, we're probably going to need to really look seriously at some way of doing the financial piece. Steve's been so much of a help in stuff, but he's retired now. He doesn't want to have to do all of it. So we're going to have to look into something like that. But once you get down to mean, I'm just looking at that, Sue did the whole yearly schedule for closers and openers and stuff like that. And if people drop out, there are people, die. You can't do it. You can't do it anymore if you die. That's right. But we try to find somebody else, and if we can't, we say, well, how do we adjust to that? But I don't think we have to be. We've got this mindset of all the stuff that we did in the past, and smaller churches can't do all that stuff anymore. But we can do. We can be. You've got a great music person, and you have a fantastic. The church staff is huge here in terms of their capacity, their ability, and we want to keep them certainly to help run things. Eileen, I didn't know that she bought the wine, the communion wine. I said, oh my God, how did you ever get stuck with that? I'm thinking, she does it anyhow. So you'll make do with that, I think. And but I was doing the lecture. Ann said, when are we getting the lecture list? So I was going through the lectures, and Charisse and Austin are on a couple of times and Charisse she's been up all night working. So what it means is that Austin's been doing it a couple of times a month. And I think, oh man, that's putting a lot of pressure on a teenage kid. So Ann, I can't remember her last name, but she's in Florida now. But she sang in the choir for a while, and she had said she wanted to be a lector. So I emailed her Florida, and I said, I'm doing this list. I said, can I put you on after May? And she said, yeah, put me on. So she'll be going in the rotation for lectors after May. But that's a new person in the neighborhood, There's a woman, I got to tell you this. There's a woman at Danville, and some of us know her because she went to Texas with her. She and her husband, Mary Lott. And Mary joined the church in Danville while I was there. And oh my gosh, the amount of energy that came with that one person is huge. And I could point to some people here and say, they're like you. But Mary, I was at a funeral yesterday, and Mary was doing the luncheon afterwards. And she came up to me and she said, I'll be there. Ron and I are coming to the regional town hall meeting at your church. So she'll be down here for that. And I don't know how I know she got it on Facebook, but, just one person can energize the church. I could tell you the things that just she did. And some of you are that kind of an ever-ready bunny, whatever the bunny is, the energy bunny. But we don't need everybody to be that, but we need everybody to do what they can. This is more than I expected, and you're very patient, but this will mean we don't have to spend a lot of time next week on it. And I don't think there'll be a whole lot more here next week than there are here now. But it was a good morning, wasn't it? I'm looking at those kids and I'm thinking, and I mentioned this to Jennifer particularly. Jennifer and Melissa Snyder, for years, did a camp at Hartman Center. And it was a camp that started one age group of kids, and they kept coming back year after year. I mean, until they graduated from high school. And one of those pair that met each other at that camp, Andrea Brown's daughter, they don't come anymore, but I don't know even where she is, Heberline now. But her daughter met her future husband, who they married now, are married at Hartman Center, at Jen and Melissa's camp. Well, how do you get that generation of kids? How do we give them the faith now? And I think that we could come up with some stuff that would be a model. And I'm not asking the group that would come on Wednesday to design this, but I've talked to some. Sharon and Tony have grandkids in Texas. You've got grandkids in New York. Sandy has grandkids in New York, and we've got one local. Some of us have grandkids. And what if we did a monthly Zoom meeting It's an educational experience. You know. Not on a Sunday morning. I don't know. But there needs to be some way that we're really conveying our faith with our younger generation. And the only reason I'm starting this, Ann says, you're crazy. But the only reason one of the reasons I'm starting this is because it is a very real concern to me, personally. How do I pass on what's important to me to those people that are most important? My kids, my grandkids. And so, I don't know where that'll go, but I think that would be interesting. And that could catch on somewhere, who knows? Because there's a lot of churches that don't have kids on Sunday morning. Messy Church was a wonderful venture, but it involves, again, you know, a group of people volunteered, meal and all kinds of stuff, and there's still churches doing it, not Sunday morning stuff, but I think, anyhow, you don't need to hear it. Anything else? I thank you for all your support, and this is one of the things. I worked in a church in Leesport when I left here, and they were demoralized, and they had a situation where a lot of people left, and so I was there for 3 years in a revitalization effort, and one of the things we did that worked was what I called small successes. That's what we need, is just small successes. Not any big grandiose thing that, it's pie in the sky when you die, but small. Having those 3 kids baptized today, for me, was a small success. Where it goes, I don't know. But at least they were here, we were able to share, and I know that Nancy was elated. She'd been praying for it for 7 years. So, that's good. Yes?
When we vote next week,
When we vote next week, I assume the rent to the Friends School will be a yes or no. How will the former strategic plan versus plan to close continuum be presented for a vote?
Yeah. The Friends School, I think, is looking to really have a future beyond the capacity of what we have here, the physicality. Especially, they were thinking of a 5-year, maybe they'd be building someplace, somewhere, who knows. But one of the things that, one of the options, obviously, for closure is that you can either sell to nonprofits, or some churches give their building to a nonprofit. I mean, there's ways. We are not obligated to, and I think in Massachusetts, I've been hearing from this Legacy Zoom meeting, you cannot just give a building away. I think they want tax money from properties. And so the building has to be realistically assessed, and somebody has to buy it. Now, that's not the case here. I mean, churches have given their buildings away, and that might be an option for their future to continue, or, they at least would know. They would know that they would have a year or two, because we're moving in the direction of leaving the building to figure out what to do for their space. But I don't really know. A lot of the literature that we've been sharing, and some of you have read the book, Gone for Good, a lot of places that repurpose, churches that repurpose, have land, or they have a structure that can be modified for housing. There's a lot of housing projects that are being generated from churches. Well, it isn't going to be a housing project, The hospital is over the other, and that's one of those things that's happening, and it's needed in this area. But so repurposing would be, or closing would be a big decision on what do we do with the building, and that would be, and then how do we take care of our members that are still with us, and need to have continuing pastoral care. Yeah, Tony.
So you're going to negotiate a contract with the school?
The school, yes,
Is it
we,
going to be a yearly contract or a five-year contract?
no, it'll be a year.
A year.
Yeah, it won't be 5 years, no. But that's their kind of 5-year plan. They're hoping to grow, for sure, so. And Steve, I didn't realize, I had forgotten this, I probably knew it at some point. When we were dickering with the price and thinking, oh man, we don't want to price them out of coming. and Steve said, there are businesses that can designate their taxes for schools, right? In Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So in other words, if you have a handful of businesses that are willing to channel to the Friends School of Lancaster their tax dollars, that's a source of income for them that I hadn't thought about. I was thinking $15,000 tuition and they're giving 70% help of the students that are given help. Where the heck are they coming from? They got some deep pockets over there to me. But yeah, I think probably they do have some deep pockets over there, but they also have other options. That I hadn't thought about. The outside painting, the stuff within the church, we're having discussions about how we can, if we need to, and how we do need, our heating services system is out of date, and we need to address that. And so we're talking a little bit about that, the Building Use Committee, and maybe some significant, but that's going to be further down the line. But it would be renovations that would preserve the integrity of the building and make it, I think, a very usable space, either for the church, for us, or for whatever future the building might have. Okay? Thank you so much, and see you next week. And it won't be